You know, an appreciation of music can cover a wide variety of genre, from the classical music to classics from the big band era in the 50s and into the rock era, country, hard rock, metal, rap. It's all music, and different people have different tastes. And, you know, my tastes cover a pretty wide variety of those genres. Not all of them, but a pretty wide variety. But we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be meeting with a guest whose experience and background and expertise covers several of those genres. And so I think you're going to enjoy it. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation, because it's time once again for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. I'm Steve Glavin, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week and join the conversation to chat about interesting topics with amazing guests. And if you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. Yeah, I mentioned, sorry, I love it when hair gets in your mouth while you're talking and while you're drinking coffee. I mentioned at the outset that we're going to be talking about music today. For those of you who've been with this show, at any time, any length of time, you know that that's one of our favorite topics. And this conversation today is especially fun for me. It's a dear friend who happens to also be a an orchestra conductor. And that's one of those things on my bucket list I've always wanted to try. I've directed choirs, but I have not directed or conducted bands or orchestras. And so I have a little bit of a vicarious thrill in talking to somebody who has that as their profession and as their background. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but I want to say good morning. And in fact, our guest is on the chat today. I saw her name here. I've seen her making comments already, Lara Webber. So good morning, Lara. Shalane is here, I see. And who else I see on here? I think I saw Rick on here. I always feel like this is Romper Room. Any of you old enough to remember Romper Room in the Magic Mirror, where they would say hello and they would just throw out kids' names, and you knew somewhere in there they were going to mention your name? And it was almost like when I was very little, like, wow, she actually sees me. That's pretty cool. Kim Baker's here. When in doubt, drink. That's right. Yes, Shalane, did he take a drink? I got distracted. I did, and in the process, I got a hair in my mouth, so that was not necessarily best way to do it. I think I saw, did I say, I saw Rick Venturi on here. Anyway, if you're joining the conversation, please do say hi to let us know that you're here. And if you are joining us for the first time, maybe let us know where you're tuning in from and anything else about you. Laura, you don't necessarily have to tell us all of those things. You can if you want to in the chat, but we're going to introduce you in a few minutes. I feel like I'm rambling today. It's been a busy week. We're trying to get things done around the house to get ready for the holiday weekend. And that does bring us to our sweet and savory this week. Just wanted to share that, hey, how many of you are fans of the musical Wicked? I've seen it. I'm trying to figure out, I think I've seen it on stage now 4 times. 3 of those times on Broadway in New York with 3 different casts. In fact, the first time that we saw it, Carol and I had taken Shalane to New York for her 18th birthday. And it was the first time any of us had been in New York. And we asked Shalane for her birthday trip what show she would like to see. And Wicked had just opened a few months before. It had opened in like 2003, and we were there summer 2004. And so we got tickets, and it turned out we didn't realize that we were getting the tickets. They didn't really realize that we were going to see the show. But we saw Wicked the first time the final week that all of the original cast members were still in the show. Kristen Chenoweth was in her last few shows that week. And so it was kind of special to see that. And then we've seen it a couple of times since. On Broadway, saw it during one of the tours, I think in Portland with some friends. And so it's one that's one of our favorite, and you ready for this, most popular shows. And the movie, the cinema version, just opened officially yesterday. So I'm curious as to how many of you are fans of Wicked and if you've seen it on stage, let us know that. And also, if you have seen already or want to see it in the cinema, let us know that as well. Just curious about people's preferences and tastes. It's funny because when musicals that have been very popular on stage come to the screen, there are a lot of mixed reviews. I can remember shows such as Into the Woods and Les Miserables, which were very, very popular on stage and then came to screen. This just in recent times. There are others. You also get the turnaround where something that maybe was a popular movie, maybe not even a musical, then gets turned. That's become more popular in recent years. It's one of the trends. Becomes a stage musical, gets written for the stage. I think about shows like Legally Blonde, movies like Legally Blonde and Back to the Future and others that have become stage musicals. But anyway, yes, I'm curious about your feelings about Wicked and whether you plan to go see that. We do. We haven't yet, but we plan on seeing it. We kind of wanted to wait till at least the opening few performances because we know the theaters are going to be crowded. Also, what else is going on this week? Well, Thanksgiving in the United States is on Thursday. And so we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Curious about how you celebrate the holiday, if you celebrate it at all. What are your traditions around celebrating Thanksgiving? And maybe put in the chat one thing that you're thankful for this year. Whether you celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday or not, nothing wrong with taking some time every single day to stop and think about what we're thankful for. I'm thankful this year for a number of things, but I'm going to mention specifically for my health. Just recognizing as I get older that more things can affect the body, and just appreciative of the fact that I'm still doing okay and thankful for that this year. So curious about you and what you may be thankful for. We'll take a look at the chat again. I know a lot of comments coming on here right now. Hey, Corey Ann, good to see you here. And then we had one birthday I wanted to mention this week, and that's Vera Packard, who has been on the show before. It's been a year or so since Vera joined us to talk about organizing and how we can clean up the clutter of our lives. But Vera is celebrating a birthday on the 27th. I do know, and we talked about it, we actually mentioned it last Saturday, but our guest today, Lara Webber, celebrated a birthday yesterday. So a happy belated birthday to Lara. And I think that's all I had on here. But do you have a special day this week that I didn't have in my calendar or list, and you wanted to make sure that we celebrate and acknowledge that with you? You can put that in the chat. And if you have a special day coming up, perhaps it's coming up in the month of December, or maybe even early next year, and you want to make sure that we, anytime next year, really, and you want to make sure that we acknowledge it and celebrate with you, you can send us an email at cbwsteve@comcast.net. And remember, it doesn't have to just be a birthday. It can be any special day that you want to make sure we celebrate with you. Maybe it's a wedding anniversary. Maybe you're getting married and you want us to celebrate your wedding day with you. Maybe it is the special day of a very close family member or someone else you want to make sure that we cause. No, wait, words weren't coming. Hang on. That we toss out a mention to and call out for their special day. Maybe it's something else, a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, something else that you want to make sure we celebrate. Anyway, I'm still rambling. That happens sometimes. There's not much we can do about that. I ramble. Just want to take a quick look. Hey, Roberta. Good to see Roberta Emerson here. And I'm just kind of looking to see, yeah, a lot of, I like that. Grateful for all the remarkable people in my life. I can share that one as well. And yeah, I see people are putting their comments about not only Wicked, but other musicals on here. Hi, Carla. And Rick is there. I couldn't remember if I'd seen Rick already. I keep looking for Rick's name. Not sure what was going on there. But anyway, hey, listen, I want to tell you about our guest and introduce our conversation here. Widely admired as a dynamic, creative, and engaging conductor, Lara Webber is dedicated to inspiring audiences through the power of symphonic music. She has been praised by fellow musicians around the country for her musical depth, genuine expression, strong personal vision, and collaborative spirit. Ms. Webber brings a broad range of experience to the podium. She has held the positions of both assistant and associate conductor of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Prior to her appointment with the Baltimore Symphony, she was associate conductor of the Charleston Symphony Orchestra in South Carolina and music director of the Charleston Symphony Orchestra Chorus. Lara currently serves as music director and conductor of the Livermore Amador Symphony and music director of the Palo Alto Philharmonic. Her career began as music director and conductor of the Los Angeles Debut Orchestra, a post previously held by such conductors as Andre Previn, Lawrence Foster, and Michael Tilson Thomas. Lara Webber's activities as a guest conductor include multiple performances with orchestras around the country, such as the Houston, Pittsburgh, San Antonio, Louisville, Santa Barbara, Modesto, the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra, and the Chicago Sinfonietta, among several others. She has served as a cover conductor for the San Francisco Symphony and the National Symphony Orchestra. Ms. Webber's operatic associations include posts as the assistant conductor of Glimmer Glass Opera and conductor of the Baltimore Opera Studio. Pretty nice CV. So now here is the conversation with Lara Webber for all of you to participate in the chat.
All right. Well, Lara Webber, thank you for being here. Welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. It's good to see you.
Hi, Steve. It's really good to see you after a long time.
It's been a while. It's been a little bit of a time. Well, you know, we shared in your bio a little bit of your background and your involvement in music, but I always think it's interesting to start by just hearing directly from you a little bit more about your background and how you first got involved in music.
Wow. Well, in music, the involvement came kind of as a part of being in the family I was in. My father is an avid fan of classical symphonic music and opera, and listened to it on, I'm old enough that those were records.
Yeah.
And so in the house growing up, I remember specific recordings. I didn't know what any of the music was at the time when I was hearing it. It turns out it was things like The Great Gate of Kiev from Mussorgsky, Pictures at an Exhibition, which if I played it right now, everyone would go, oh yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I've heard that. And a piece, a symphony by Sibelius, his second symphony, a recording of that. For most of my childhood, I had no idea what I was listening to. I was just like, it would transport me. Whatever I was thinking or doing, my attention would just be grabbed. And what it would do is it would start like a movie in my head. It was very a cinematic experience for me. So that was just always that was something that would happen in my household. And my mother is an opera singer, she recently died, but I was raised by a professional musician. My parents divorced when I was about 10, but the combination of my dad's love of classical music and playing these symphonies and my mom's career, and she was a single mom. So we didn't have I didn't have a babysitter or whatever. My babysitter was going to my mom's rehearsals. I would go from school on the bus to the Seattle Opera House and sit in the corner for opera rehearsals. And then I grew up at a time when music in the schools was part of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And you had, your basic core classes. And then you would also, fifth period, you'd have general music, and in which you would make music. You would sing, you would play a drum or a guitar or a ukulele or something. In elementary school, middle school, it was either be in the choir or take up an instrument. And all the way through high school, I played the cello, and the high school orchestra was really good. And that was just a big part of my life. It was never something that was going to be my career choice. I was not a child prodigy, partly because my mom was a professional singer, but I secretly had a voice that I could also sing. So I started singing in high school because I loved musical theater. And all of these things, this is we could narrow it down, but all of these things combined to create the groundwork for what turned out to be what my passion for life is. And I only came to professional focused study of conducting in school and a professional conducting career after a series of decisions that just didn't work out quite the way I expected, which would lead to something else. And in college, at Oberlin College, my coffee mug for Coffee Breaks with Steve, I don't know if
there
I can
we
say
go.
Oberlin mug.
Wow.
And I took a music history class with a remarkable teacher named Sylvan Suskin, guy with a big shock of curly red hair. He looked like Beaker from the Muppets, only for music history.
Yeah.
And so going back to all those records from my childhood, all of a sudden I'm sitting in Oberlin Conservatory with 100 other students, and he's playing this music and explaining why I love it. He's teaching me about what it all means and the stories behind the music and what was going on historically and what led to what. And I just sat in that room going, oh, I have to learn more about this. This is the thing. And I wasn't a really good enough instrumentalist to audition on the cello. I just didn't practice hard enough. I had too many other interests. So I sang my way into the Oberlin Conservatory, and through a series of coursework, encountered a conducting class, and the teacher said, you are good at this. This you should think about doing. I didn't have any idea I was good at it.
you end up graduating. Did you graduate with a degree that was focused on conducting, and how did that lead for, what did you end up graduating with, and what
So
happened next?
I got a Bachelor of Music in vocal performance. So I did do a degree in music just as a performance degree. I toyed with the idea of music education and some other things because I was really concerned about being able to be employed in any way that I could possibly be paid anything. But I realized that my interest in music education when I was between the ages of like 18 and 21 was more about the conducting than it was about the teaching. And so I steered away from trying to do a degree in music ed and focused on just doing the degree work for being a voice major, which is an immense level of study. I mean, thinking about training as a singer from a classical perspective, you have your at least 3 languages you need to be able to sing in and understand on a fundamental level, plus all the repertoire, plus the development of your musicianship, basic other prerequisite courses for a bachelor's degree. And then there were 2 teachers at Oberlin at the time that I was there. One, a woman named Mallory Thompson, who's the one who pulled me aside and said, "You're really good at this. You should think about continuing to study." And Robert Spano, who for 20 years was the music director of the Atlanta Symphony, and before that, music director in other significant places. And I never got a degree in conducting in my undergrad, but I studied really primarily conducting in the last 2 years. And when you study conducting, that means you're studying every single thing. You're learning the music, you're learning the technique of how to do the music with musicians. And at a school like Oberlin, all I had to do was put up a sign that said, "Is anybody free? Do you want to read through Beethoven 2 and Beethoven 7? And the room would fill up with people. And God bless those people, because I was a really inexperienced, totally annoying conductor. And they helped me, because conductors, you can't practice. You can study, you can conceptualize.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you can go, okay, how would I actually do that? But it's all abstract. It's not like practicing the piano or the violin or even singing. You can't do the music. You can find ways of externalizing the sound for yourself, but it is a totally other thing to get experience as a totally inexperienced conductor. You have to have musicians who are willing to be your guinea pigs and live through that stage with you.
Yeah.
And that was my laboratory. Oberlin was my laboratory.
Wow.
I got a diploma, I got a master's degree in conducting in graduate school with another teacher at another school. But that was really the foundational place for me. And Bob Spano was the foundational teacher.
Wow.
With the gateway from Mallory. So
now you are actually the conductor of 2 symphony orchestras in Northern California.
Correct.
Right. And do you want to talk just a little bit about your current roles, how you got involved in those, and a little bit about now as you've progressed beyond what you experimented with in college and working toward that, and where you are now in your career? What do you enjoy most about your roles as a conductor of these orchestras?
So after school, I was immediately hired into professional orchestra titled conducting positions. I had a very fast start. It was almost too fast. I had not yet just figured out that we all have imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now's when they're going to find out that I'm actually not good at this, or that I don't have enough experience, or. So I was just launched into jobs with really heavy loads of music I needed to be prepared to conduct, full of orchestras, full of musicians, all of us kind of struggling. Artists are never at a certain level in a really meteoric rise of a career. You might get paid enough to live, but when you're building a career as an artist, it's really hard to piece it together. So lots of really super talented, struggling young artists in small regional professional orchestras, and I was leading these groups in some capacity or another and kind of having a real reality check. Like, oh, it's not all, wow, that was so fulfilling and just magical. It's, good Lord, how am I going to make ends meet? And there was that phase like in my 20s and early 30s.
Yeah.
I worked with orchestras like the Charleston Symphony in South Carolina, a wonderfully talented group, Houston Symphony, Pittsburgh, Baltimore Symphony. My husband and I had dual careers all at the same time, traveling all the time. Somewhere in there with little kids, my husband was hired by the Livermore Lab out here in Livermore, California. And I was I just left my position in Baltimore and followed him. For a while, I was just my children's mother. I loved it. I was no longer an orchestra conductor. I was just somebody's mom. And I had my weekends and evenings. And it took a while before I really went, oh my God, I need to be doing the thing I do. And here's an orchestra in the town of Livermore. Been here for, at the time I became attached to them, they'd been around for 50 years. And I was asked to lead them as a guest conductor. And I really thought that this is a community orchestra. This is not a professional orchestra. I had no experience leading an orchestra that was not, at the first rehearsal going to just play everything. I knew that I would have to have a skill that I had never used, which was to really bring up from the very, very first rehearsal the level of the orchestra to be able to play just the notes on the page, let alone apply an interpretation to that. And what I've gained from doing that with this group of musicians that's so rooted in this community, these are the people that built this town. They're the people who created support for and built our local theater, the Bankhead Theater. They're the teachers, the accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, the physicists, the physical therapists, the music teachers, the retired professional musicians, the up-and-coming young students who are the kinds of kids in college who always had a music side hobby, and so making music with these folks is just revelatory. I feel like I've become such a much better conductor working with them because I've learned so much of how to make things better. And that is what I love the most. And I don't think I knew that about myself until I was working here in Livermore with this orchestra, is that what I love about conducting is the process of pulling all of these different people, these different notes, these different themes and melodies and harmonies and rhythms together, making it better, making it so that we are all thinking about the sound in the same way, that we're all listening to each other. That is the key to conducting, is listening. And so I then took that experience and decided, I figured out how to do this with this remarkable group of community musicians that's rooted in the town in which I live. And there's another orchestra that's looking for some leadership in Palo Alto. And it's a very different orchestra, but the same kind of fabric of the community has built it, same tradition over a long period of time. And so I just decided to see what I could do for them also. And these two experiences inform each other. And there are different challenges for each orchestra. So yeah, and then of course, then delivering that project that you've been working on and making better to an audience is so tremendously rewarding, because without our listeners, audiences often really have no concept of the importance of their role. It's not just excuse my terminology, butts in seats who bought tickets. There is an active connection and energy between what is being produced on the stage and how it is being received, and vice versa. That it feels like a very passive thing to just listen to something, but it's not. When you are paying attention, you are attending. It's a verb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that connection means everything to us and changes how we play.
Have you found throughout your career, starting out or even in the progression going forward, that you faced any specific challenges because you were a woman coming into a conducting role? And how have you overcome that, if that was the case?
So I think I was really unconscious of that at the beginning of my studies as a conductor. I never. This is a big credit to my predecessors in this field. To all the way back to Nadia Boulanger and Sarah Caldwell, and more recently Joanne Folletta, Marin Alsop. Because of them, I just didn't. There was nothing in me consciously that went, okay, I really like conducting, but I don't know. Like, women don't do that. Never happened. Never dawned on me. To be honest, I hadn't actually seen and witnessed a lot of examples of women on the podium in front of my very eyes, really at all. But it just didn't. I didn't think that was a barrier. It wasn't anything in my consciousness. It's only been in the last, like, as my career was starting, that I realized how alone I really was. And that is not just true for women conductors. It's also true for women in titled positions in orchestras, like principal players in woodwind and brass sections especially.
Right.
Really true for women composers and executive leaderships of orchestras. And so I think I was so unconscious of this that I may not have even acknowledged my own biases in those areas. So, for example, I've had to, just as much as any other person, really make sure that I'm learning, studying, and seeking the repertoire that has been for centuries composed by really remarkable women whose music was not permitted to enter what we call the canon of classical music, the great library of art that you're supposed to learn in conservatory or college or wherever, and that regularly, like the Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, Mahler, Shostakovich, I'm saying words, great symphonists. There are many other great symphonists who were women, whose music was not repeatedly performed, or not. I mean, I recently performed a really brilliant concert overture by the French composer Louise Farrenc, who was the first full-time teacher of piano who was a woman in the Paris Conservatory in the middle of the 18th century and taught for 30 years at the Paris Conservatory. She was an equal pay person. She demanded equal pay in France and got it 100 years before France made that a law. And she wrote symphonies and concert overtures and piano works. And there's a big body of work. It's beautiful. She's in the same era of composition as Schumann and Mendelssohn, if that means anything to people. But she was not allowed to teach composition in the conservatory, and her works were not acknowledged or performed. So it's only now when we're all going, hey, wait a minute, let's go back. So when I was a student up and coming as a composer, I was not taught any music written by anyone who was not, a dead German white guy.
Yeah.
Just really, I was not taught any of this music. It was not in the curriculum. There were some composers who would, like Clara Schumann and Fanny Mendelssohn, but it wasn't taught. So still, as a woman on the podium, was I aware of resistance in orchestras that I led in the 1990s, where the people sitting across from me might not have the same reaction to me as a person with authority on the podium leading that they would a man? Definitely that bias exists. I think it exists in all of us because we don't see it enough. It's not a normal example. Marin, when she talks about this, Marin Alsop talks about how she, in her travels, she's in an airplane and, you're getting your seatbelt on and you're putting your tray table in the upright and locked position. And the captain comes on and goes, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today our flight pattern is going to be this, that, and the other. And the weather in San Francisco is this." And Marin would just say, "Oh my God, it's the voice I'm hearing is a woman. The pilot of the plane is a woman." And she would think to herself, "Uh-oh, am I okay?" Right? This is like in 1992, 3, 4. And then she's like, "Oh my God, I can't, what? This is because I don't have an example of this enough in my life," right? Mm. The analogy she uses, I think that's really true. And yeah, you're right. The good news is that there's a huge amount of conducting talent across the board of people of all backgrounds, all genders, all walks of life. And there are an increasing number of really remarkable younger women conductors now, whose work I really admire. And the thing we're missing is a lot of representation at the very highest level. Right now, I believe in the United States, Nathalie Stultzmann, music director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, I believe is the only woman heading a major American orchestra. Marin recently stepped down as being music director in the Baltimore Symphony. Yeah. She's principal guest at in the Philadelphia Orchestra, but there's no other that I'm aware. Oh wait, Seattle Symphony just hired. Name is escaping me. We should dig that one up.
We'll find that one and include it. Yes.
She's music director of the New Jersey Symphony. And I hope we're moving out of the phase where orchestras will hire a woman. Like I was hired as the associate conductor of the Baltimore Symphony. And when I left, the assumption was that the next person would definitely not be a woman because, well, they just did that. But I mean, wait, what? So men get hired over and over, and that's fine. Yeah. But you have to like, oh no, we had a woman, so we have to switch out. Like, does that work if it's like, okay, we had a redhead of whatever gender, now we have to definitely not have a redhead? Like, so really? We still have some work to do, a lot of work to do. But to answer your question, I think I had to overcome what a lot of women do, where we assume responsibility for everyone else's feelings and well-being. And if you're doing that on the podium, you're in big, big trouble. Because the dissatisfaction of one person in the room, if that's what you're thinking about, you are not doing your job. Not at all. And you cannot keep all of the people happy all of the time. You must service the music, use the time very well, be very respectful and try to make the experience as positive for everyone as you can. But if you're playing to those, like I definitely had to recover from the assumption of fault in everything, from being a little too like, I don't know if I should, lower the boom on that one. Oh no, lower the boom. Boom. Authority is should not be something that we women hesitate to feel completely normal asserting, no matter our roles.
Yeah.
And we have all been taught through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of example that is not an equal thing between men and women. So I think because of my predecessors and because of my deep interest in what I was doing and how hard it is to be a conductor, never mind if I'm a woman, right? It's so challenging to become prepared. There's so much to do. There's not time to think about, oh yeah, and I'm a woman. I mean, and plus I've always been a woman. So, right. I've always been a woman, right? So
yeah,
there you go.
There you go. In terms of like bucket list, are there any pieces that are out there that you've kind of looked at and haven't brought to an orchestra that you think one of these days I really want to do that? Or are there any orchestras around the world anywhere that there's this dream in your mind that goes, someday I would love to be able to stand on that podium and guest conduct that orchestra? Any bucket list items like that?
So bucket list items, I recently, a couple of years ago, I did a piece by Saint-Saëns, a French composer, symphony, Third Symphony. Many people will know it as the Organ Symphony. It's in C major, and there's this moment in the music where an entire big pipe organ comes in on this huge chord. For those people in the world might be most familiar with this from the movie Babe, with the story that's the sheep wrangling pig.
Yep.
And at the end, when Babe wins the competition, the triumph, hooray music is that music.
Yeah.
That is probably a bucket list piece. Conducting the Sibelius symphonies that I've referred to has definitely been one of those. I have yet to do one of the biggest Shostakovich symphonies. I would be very interested in getting my hands on that. Those are really, that's a big investment for an orchestra to make. So it's more than just, can I do it? It's, can the institution hold it up? Putting an orchestra on the stage is a major project. Even if you're talking about volunteers who are not compensated to play themselves, it's still a major project.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, conducting Star Wars was a bucket list item. And I did that very early in my career because it turns out that a lot of up and coming conductors do all of the Pops concerts or the outdoor concerts where you play all the film scores. So I got that one out of the way early. But no, it's sort of the next thing in front of me is often, and I'm more and more interested in projects that more than just, here's this amazing piece of music that I love and we're going to put it together and everyone's going to go, that was so amazing. I am more interested in who lives here and what can we share that those people who live here will see themselves in this music, so that we are not just inviting people in by saying, hey, over here, do this because it's good for you, or Beethoven, because Beethoven.
Yeah.
But more like because I know I was drawn into this music not because I had some special skill or knowledge about what it meant or who wrote it. I literally didn't know any of that. I just heard it and was like, oh, what's that? So, and I know that when we go into the schools and play directly for children in their multi-purpose rooms during, where they eat lunch, I see that happen for children where they're just completely, what? Oh my God, engaged. And they don't have any information about what's going on. You don't need it. So overcoming those hurdles to help people really access it, whatever the music is that does that, that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer.
The Beatles,
Absolutely.
Early in my career, I was in LA conducting an orchestra in Los Angeles, and I got to know film score composers who kind of are legendary, like Henry Mancini, and an orchestrator, an arranger named Irwin Kostal. He turned out to be the person who made the orchestral soundtrack to Mary Poppins. So it's all the songs that the Sherman Brothers wrote. Okay, the Sherman Brothers, right? Just a spoonful of sugar, yes, and feed the birds, tuppence a bag. So we took those songs and orchestrated them. But there's all the orchestral music that underscores the movie that when they're not singing, right? He wrote all of that, incorporating those melodies. And some of that music is the most emotionally touching.
Yes.
Literally in the opening of Mary Poppins in the overture, it's an orchestration of Feed the Birds. And I cry. Like it starts and I'm in tears. And I stood next to that guy in an elevator, Irwin Kostal. He's like taller than the elevator. He's 100,000 years old.
Wow.
And I was going into the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. This was before Disney Hall was built. And we were going to be doing with the orchestra I was leading a celebration of film music. And I had this giant pile of paper in my hands, and it was the overture to Mary Poppins. And I'll be honest with you, I could barely read the music. It was hand scratch. I had to really decipher it. It was so big that seeing from bottom to top was like a problem. I learned some of the music by looking at the parts that the musicians have on their stands because it was literally missing from the score. And I started complaining about this, not knowing who he was. And he goes, I wrote that. I'm the arranger. He had this voice. I can't even do it. He was so sweet, very old fashioned. As we exited the elevator, he like offered his arm to me.
Wow.
And he stood next to me while I conducted that overture. And I got to tell the orchestra that he wrote it. I was super embarrassed, of course, going, how does anybody read this? I wrote that. Oh, you really should get it like printed.
Yeah.
So then, you know, when you have that connection, like that music, we play a concert for free for the community here in Livermore. Now we do it outside in front of the Bankhead Theater. First thing we do in the year after the gala, we assemble the orchestra, we put microphones up, we invite the community to come sit on the lawn and listen. And every few years we pull out an arrangement of songs from Mary Poppins. Mm. I am just as happy conducting a community orchestra where we've kind of just sort of, we're playing the best we can and in an outdoor setting where we're not going to sound like we normally do inside, and we haven't had enough rehearsals, and maybe it's a little too hot out or dry, or, you know, conditions are not perfect and we may not sound as remarkable as we could. But the music itself is just so fun that I'm just as happy in that moment of Feed the Birds, Tuppence a Bag, opening that scene in that environment as I am leading Sibelius Symphony or Beethoven and with, you know, a great orchestra in a great perfect space. And it's all in what is the story that you're telling and who are you telling it to?
Yes. Well, Lara Webber, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thank you for sharing all of these amazing stories. And thank you for sharing this talent that you have loved and acquired with so many people through the things that you do.
Oh, thank you. I could not do it without all those musicians playing. It's them making the noise.
Absolutely.
Good to see you, Steve.
Good to see you.
All right. Wasn't that a great conversation? Lara, I want to thank you once again for taking the time to share so many great stories. And by the way, I'll just tell you that what you just watched was edited down for time. There were a lot more stories, and hopefully we'll be able to share that on our YouTube channel with the complete conversation, because I had to cut probably about 20 minutes out of our actual conversation just to get it to fit into our timeline here on the show. But Lara not only shares such amazing stories about music and about her experience learning to become a conductor, conducting orchestras, but just the storyline behind so much of this and the passion. So Lara, once again, thank you so much for what you do and for sharing that. I want to share a few things that are going to be coming up in the next couple weeks on Coffee Breaks. And the first one, just so you know, for next week, this is Thanksgiving weekend, and we do have family things going on. And so we're going to take a little break, and we're going to give you a break to just enjoy the full Thanksgiving weekend. If you're in the United States, you may have family things going on as well. You may be traveling. If you're not in the United States, maybe you're not celebrating officially Thanksgiving weekend this next weekend, but take a break. And if you're thinking, well, shoot, I don't want to take a break from Coffee Breaks, you know that you can go to our YouTube channel, which we'll talk about in a moment, and you can find past episodes of Coffee Breaks with Steve. Maybe there's one that you missed because you were busy traveling or doing family things, or, there's no really good reason to miss Coffee Breaks, but sometimes it happens. So you can go back and thank you again, Lara. Thank you. But you can go back and find past episodes, and I encourage you to do that. Find some of those episodes. And that brings us to the next thing that's going to be happening. It's 2 weeks out, is we're going to be doing a guest update episode. We did this about 1.5 years ago, where we asked some of the former guests, we asked many of our former guests if they would like to share any updates going on, because lots of times our guests come on and they're talking about their projects. They're talking about something that they're going to be doing, or they just have additional things that are happening in their careers, in their lives, with a special project, or if there are an artist performances coming up. And we've reached out again to past guests, and we've had a number of them already responded, more responding either with just letting us know via an email. Some of them are actually submitting little brief videos where they're sharing what they're doing. So come back in a couple of weeks and make sure that you catch those guest updates. It's kind of fun to hear what's been going on, and it's a reminder about some of those guests. We also had a few guests, by the way, and these aren't, I'm not sharing yet dates because we haven't said all of them, but some of them said, well, shoot, rather than just give you a brief update, I'd love to come back on the show and just do another episode with you about what's been going on. That happened a few weeks ago, if you recall. Beth Roars from England came back to the show about a year after she'd originally been on to share her album and other things going on. And we have others lining up to do that. And then we'd like to know from you, what are the topics that you would like to discuss? Who are the guests that you would like to see? So many of our guests come to us because you've made an introduction or you have a recommendation. And I'm so appreciative of that. This is your conversation as well. We all gather around the virtual coffee table each week. And so your input is important to me. And we want to follow up on that so that you can engage even more effectively. And I just want to remind you how far we've come. If you were here last week, you got to enjoy our 250th episode, and we had some surprises in store. I want to say once again, a thank you to Jazz Osry for surprise guest hosting last week's episode when she interviewed me for our 250th. But we've been on for 5.5 years. Today was the 251st episode. We've had 120 of those episodes have been with guests, and 87 unique individuals have come on the show to join us on Coffee Breaks with Steve. And we're going to continue to be reaching out and doing that for the foreseeable future. I don't have a retirement date from this show in mind. And then I do want to give you a reminder that we do have a YouTube channel. While our live show is most easily accessible here on Facebook because we can all chat together, I just want to also remind you about the YouTube channel. And if you are not already a subscriber to our channel, would you please go there and subscribe? The link is in the chat right now, but it's easy to find on YouTube by just doing a search for Coffee Breaks with Steve. And that's the best way for us to reach a broader audience. We have kind of this intimate core audience that joins us on Facebook Live, but a lot more people do come in and watch the show as it's recorded. And that's where we can reach people from around the world. A lot more people go to YouTube and do searches than come onto Facebook. And with the algorithms on YouTube, the more we can get people signed up for that, the more the people subscribe and like the videos and hit the bell to get updates, the more we're going to be out there in front of a broad audience. And so if you're already a subscriber, if you're not, then please subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, would you take that link and with your own outreach to your network, would you let people know why you think it's worthwhile for them to be a subscriber to Coffee Breaks with Steve? That, again, is going to get the word out. We can share. Just think about how many more people could be inspired and motivated by listening to Lara Webber talk about her experiences. And so many of our great guests we've heard from over the years. And so thank you. Thank you all. And we already shared, by the way, the websites for both the Livermore Amador Symphony and for the Palo Alto Philharmonic. And you see that Lara put in the chat upcoming performances. But if you go to the websites, we're going to share those again on our Facebook page. But if you go to those websites, if you live in the Bay Area, then those are easily accessible to you. You live anywhere in Northern California, you can get there. But some people even have plans to travel, or you're looking for an excuse to travel. San Francisco and the Bay Area, beautiful area to get to. The area around Livermore, what's called the Tri-Valley, is a beautiful region that a lot of people miss when they go to the Bay Area, as well as Palo Alto on the peninsula. Okay, enough geography lesson. Listen, it's past that time. I want to thank you for sticking with us a little bit long today so that we can get that conversation in and share a few things with you. One more time, a very special thank you to Lara Webber, and the best to you, Lara, as you continue to lead and conduct and direct and share so much with the community and beyond. And a thank you to all of you for being here and joining us and being part of the conversation. You know, we live in times that can seem like there's a lot of upheaval in the world around us sometimes. And yet we all have voices. We all have things that we're passionate about, and things that we want to reach out to people about. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you next time on Coffee Breaks with Steve.